Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. For more than 3 decades, I've been a summer camp director, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents. I really enjoy sharing stories, tips, and ideas to help others who care about young people raise a generation of kind, self-reliant, optimistic kids who become thriving adults. If you're interested in summer camp, parenting, or happiness, you've come to the right place. In episode 38, I'm thrilled to be chatting with Karen Kolp of the We Turned Out Okay website and podcast. Enjoy the episode. Well, hello. I'm really excited today to have Karen Kolp on the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. So Karen has, for more than 2 years, had a podcast called We Turned Out Okay. And her mission is to help worried and hovering parents of young children, people who she thinks were a lot like she was when she was parenting young children. She just wants to bring them some reassuring, helpful advice and conversations. So her message on her podcast, which I really enjoy listening to, is very similar to my message, is that, let's just all take a deep breath. There's little things that we can do to just make our family lives more peaceful and connected and fun. So Karen, let's just get started. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. I love your podcast. I love Sunshine Parenting. And I am super, super glad that our mutual friend, Devorah Heitner, connected us. And I think you just before we started recording, you said something about how we do similar things. We just do them for different ages of kids. And so all of my expertise is in early childhood education. I have a master's degree in early childhood education and a bachelor's in human development, family relations. And when my oldest turned 10, I freaked out because my degree and my teaching certificate go to age 9. And I was like, oh God, now I've got a 10-year-old. I don't know what to do with him. And so I feel like you kind of take over from where I leave off. But the neat thing is I also am now the mother of teenagers. And what I have found is that parenting teenagers is an awful lot like parenting 5-year-olds. It's so similar.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. And it's interesting when you were talking, I was remembering, at summer camp, we were very specific about figuring out what age group people really work well with. And I don't think parents actually think about that very much. But when you talk to parents, they often very much have an inclination. They might say, oh, I love the baby stage. I'm really good at that. I did a lot of babysitting. That's what I know. And you speak from like, oh, I feel so knowledgeable about the early childhood. But of course, as parents, we have to do the whole spectrum, and many of the same things that work, like you said, for younger kids work for all ages. But I just think it's interesting because we have to sort of learn as we go with our own parenting, even if you're a high school teacher or a psychologist specializing in adolescence, once you're parenting, you're doing the whole ages. So I think it's interesting. And I think parents don't usually talk about that they actually can be better at different ages as a parent. They might relate better to, a lot of people really like it when their kids become teenagers because they're like young adults and you can talk to them more and they're not as into the younger ages.
Yeah. As much as I loved my kids' early childhoods, although I was very worried through them, but as much as I did enjoy them as little kids and stuff like that, I always dreaded the teenage years. And I would say I'm enjoying this at least as much. I mean, the conversations you can have, the ideas, the questions, it's just been so cool.
Oh, I love teenagers. I think they are the best kids. And I think, a lot of times they get sort of a bad rap by culture. But when you talk to individual kids and the kids I meet the most phenomenal teenage kids, and they are very thoughtful and really, they have a lot to share and say. We just have to listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like every teenager has that potential, has that capacity. And we're doing them a huge disservice. We're doing ourselves a huge disservice if we don't recognize it and try to understand them, as people. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's funny because a lot of what I teach is helping parents sort of understand their children as people and to say, like, because a parent will be like, but why does she always want to watch the same movie again and again and again? I can't take it. And I'll say, like, well, if you think about it developmentally, like, they already know what's happening in that story. It can be a thrilling story with a safe ending. Like, and I'll ask parents, like, maybe you can think of something that you want that to be like in your life. And, kids they have a much harder time with uncertainty than adults do, or, sometimes often. And, I do think that it's really the best way to be happy in your parenting is to recognize that your child is a person and to, respect them and expect that respect in return.
Yes. I mean, that's the same thing. It's that connection and relationship that's fundamental to everything we do. If you get to know your kid, and your kids won't all be the same if you have more than one. That's the other thing. Even something that like worked, you think you really mastered this, and oh, wow, this really worked with this kid. And then you have this different kid that has a whole different thing. And, one story that I'll never forget this because it really taught me a lot as a parent. So there was this swim instructor that was super popular in my, this is when my 24 and 22-year-olds were little. And my 24-year-old, when she was a kid, she was like 4 years old, I think, she jumped right in, swam with this guy. His name is Coach Tom. Did great with him, learned how to swim. And it was the sink or swim approach. It was, you're in the water, you're swimming, and you swim to the edge. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. She swims, and she liked it and everything. So my second child, I was like, when she was 3 or 4, or whatever age was, took her, and it was a terrible experience. And it was not the right kind of instruction for her. She needed to be eased in. She needed to go to the swimming place where you blow bubbles, and then you just slowly. And it really, even someone like me who's been working with kids for a long time, it really struck me that you need to know your own kid, because certain things, if your gut feeling is, this isn't the right setup for my kid, whether it's a school or a sports team or whatever it is, you got to go with that, because that may be the thing that a bunch of people say is so great, but it's not necessarily great for your kid. So I think especially with early years, well, in all years, I just think it's being aware that just because something is popular might not mean that it's a good fit for your child.
And, it makes me think, too, of an experience we had just a month or so ago, skiing, where my 17-year-old, I like to say that he needs a long runway. Mm-hmm. He's very introverted, and he's very, he likes to ease into things. And it's taken us a long time to learn that he will do it when he feels comfortable, right? And so we were skiing this past, it was just in March, out in Colorado. He's very excited about this trip, as are we all. And there was this one day where we went to a favorite ski resort from the last time we were there, called Arapahoe Basin. And on the way up, he's talking about how he loves Arapahoe Basin for all these different reasons, and he's so excited to get on his snowboard and go. And we basically pressured him into taking a lift up that brought us to the extreme top. Like, and it didn't look, if you have any kind of vertigo, or I don't even know what to call it, but vertigo comes close. It can look like you're on the surface of the moon, and it's so wide open that he just couldn't. He told me later that he forgot how to ski, how to snowboard, and he forgot how to turn. And I just was kicking myself, because I felt like we could have given him such a better day if we had given him the runway that he needed. Mm-hmm. And he did get it back. I mean, he ended up recovering that day and had a good time there. And then he had future other awesome snowboarding days. So it wasn't like it was ruined forever, but I just felt like, God, this could have been so much better if I had done it right. And I know he needs that long runway, and I got to remember that. So,
okay. So hopefully listeners, as they listen to us talking, these people who have studied child development and worked with thousands of kids and everything, just hopefully everybody will be reassured to see that parenting is not a perfect science. And even those of us who have many kids or a lot of experience with kids, you learn also from the things that don't go well with your kids, what works and what doesn't. As you were talking, I was just thinking, at camp, we talk a lot about kids' comfort zone. So basically, people have all different sizes comfort zones. Some kids are comfortable in a lot of, high risk, crazy new things. They'll be the first one to try things. So they have a very large comfort zone. For those kids, for them to grow, they need something a little bit more to get into the next zone, which we call the growth zone. It's a little bit challenging. But for kids who need a longer runway, who have a smaller comfort zone, we need to make sure that we provide just enough challenge that gets them slightly out of their comfort zone so they can grow that comfort zone slowly. But you can't just stick a kid like that in the scariest thing. So like at camp, you look at the ropes course and it's something that it's really high up. For some kids, they, their growth zone might be going up a third of the ladder or something. It's just like, I'm going to challenge myself. This is getting me out of my comfort zone. I'm going to go a little bit this time, feel comfortable with that. And then maybe next time I'll go a little higher. And so it's really being aware that we can't expect all kids or all people to have the same zones. And when you get into, when you described your son, that's in the blackout zone. That was so far out of the comfort zone that there's no growth going to happen. You're frozen. You are unable to grow. So all of us learning to recognize that in ourselves too is really important. Okay. So we're going to switch gears because I want to talk to you. So one of the things that I've been focusing on this year is just helping families and parents think about just little changes, little things that we can do to just make family life happier, less stressful, more connected. And you have been doing a series and doing a lot of trainings on evenings and making evenings more peaceful and less chaotic. Yep. So can you share some of your wisdom on this topic with families? Ideas just for taking everything down a notch and making those evenings just a better time in families? Yes.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity. This has been an absolute revelation for me. I started working with a family in the wintertime, and they've got very young kids. And the grown-ups in this house are both working professionals. They're both awesome and smart and funny and loving. And they had fostered the kind of weeknights that would make somebody want to curl up in a ball and cry because they didn't know how to do it any differently. So I really went into, I got to observe at their home, which was just, I was so grateful for that chance. They were like, yes, please come and see what you can find. And what I noticed right away and what I've been able to help them with the most is there was absolutely no sort of communication between any party. So, a kid would want a toy from another kid and would yank it, and that kid would hit him. So not communication, but instead just sort of a reactionary kind of violence, right? A parent would see a dish about to fall off the counter and go, blah, 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 and it would go, and then there would be a meltdown over there. And the other parent is maybe saying something in a frustrated tone to that parent because why did you let that happen? No communication in any way, right? And that's actually where I developed this Tame the Weeknight Chaos workshop that I've actually been able to do it live with my friend Janine Holleran. She's been a guest on my show several times. She's amazing. She's a licensed mental health counselor, and she specializes in teaching kids coping skills. And in fact, she is getting a lot of requests she writes workbooks, and she's getting a lot of requests for a teenage workbook on coping skills. So stay tuned for that. I mean, she's so amazing. So anyway, she and I teamed up and we did this live workshop, and the parents in that workshop had so many of the same kind of situations and questions. And for me, what it all really came down to was fostering communication. So some things that don't foster communication are screens. And sometimes parents are tied, for example, to like a timer. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to set the timer on my phone for 2 minutes. And at the end of that, you got, we're going to need to do this or whatever. And you're inviting kids to negotiate. That's what happened with this particular family, is they'd get to the end and it would ding and people had gone off in a bunch of different directions and they weren't paying attention kind of a thing. And they'd be like, oh, it's a surprise now. And I felt like if you could take any one thing out of this night that would make it better, just take out the screens, take out the timer. If you say 2 minutes and you don't have a timer, it can be 2 minutes or it can be 30 seconds or it can be 5 minutes, depending on what feels right. You know what I mean? But if you're stuck with that timer, everybody's waiting for it, and that can be frustrating. So, so that's just one quick tip, and it isn't just the timer; it's putting all screens away. I will say that for a family that I've been working with, my suggestion was for 10 minutes a night when you get home from work and childcare and school, just take 10 minutes, set your phone aside, shut all the TVs off, find an open-ended activity that you can all do together, whether it's playing with Play-Doh or a favorite of mine is cornstarch and water. Janine Hollowan would recommend fidgets, which are those like little twisty things, and just sit together or sit in nature. You know what I mean? Or take a walk. Do something where you're either your hands are busy or you're walking together where questions come up and they can be thought about and wondered. And there's just a lot of opportunity for kids to ask questions and just helping you know a little bit better who they are and appreciate, like, why did you have them, but also opening up lines of communication. And I feel like this becomes so important if there was trouble in school or if there is a fight going on with a sibling or something like that. If they trust you to respect them and to understand, like we were talking about before, and to understand that they have a need or an opinion or something like that, it makes those weeknights go a lot more smoothly when there's more communication. Does that make sense? I feel like I just talked there.
Oh, no, it's great. I like obviously just that connecting and talking. I was just thinking about, and I'm sure it kind of changes, as kids with different ages.
Yeah.
I wonder too, I think some of the stress sometimes comes from, like homework and stuff and everyone having their different things. What are your thoughts on family dinner? That's something that I talk about a lot.
It's so important. It is so important. I think, I guess I would say a couple things. First of all, if you can, just before we even get to dinner, like everybody gets home and they're all cranky because they're hungry and, they've been up since 5:30 this morning and all that kind of stuff. If you can reconnect, again, depending on the age, but if you can reconnect and have a snack at the same time, that can help a lot. And then I cannot overestimate the importance of a family dinner or a family meal. If it can't be dinner, if you got practices and evening activities and people are working late and stuff like that, I've heard of families who eat dinner at 4:00 in the afternoon because that's when they can all be home, or breakfast. They all get up an hour early because breakfast is their time for connecting, and they're going to all sit down together before buses come and before people go off to their jobs. And I know from personal experience that, like I was saying before about how I was very frightened to have a 10-year-old instead of a 9-year-old. Well, we'd already instituted family dinner. It doesn't have to be the gourmet. It can be McDonald's. I mean, at least sometimes it can, right? It can be pasta with sauce. If you can lengthen it by having the kids help you make salads or help you clean up or whatever, or even just clean up, together so that they're working this out now. Like all of those things foster communication, and the family dinners, sitting down together. It's just so, again, it's time where, there's time for questions. There's time for jokes. There's time for, like, what was your favorite thing about today? And, a couple of weeks ago, one of my youngest son, who's 13, we'd all been sitting at the dinner table for probably 15 or 20 minutes at this point, and there was a lull in the conversation, and he said to Ben, my husband, he said, "How was your day, Dad?" And Ben said, "It was pretty great. I'm up for a promotion. I found out I'm up for a promotion today." I'm like, I've been sitting here for 20 minutes and I didn't know that. Like, because it just hadn't, nobody'd asked that question yet or whatever. And it just felt so good to me that my child kind of helped my husband go, "Oh yeah, this cool thing happened," and they're great for if there's anything troubling anyone. So one day, a couple of years ago, friends of ours were raided by the police, and the teenager in their house stood her ground and said, "You are not coming into this house. Neither one of my parents is home. You don't have a warrant. I'm sorry, I'm not letting you in." And later, the parents were able to talk to it apparently was a noise complaint. And the parents were able to talk to the police chief, and they said to the police chief, like, what right does your police officer have to make my daughter feel frightened and in trouble when in fact, you don't have a right to push your way into our house or whatever. And so we brought that up at the dinner table, and the kids' questions were amazing. First of all, they know this kid. But second of all, they were like, what would we ever do if somebody did that to us? If a cop was here, like, what would that feel like? And what if it was not a cop, but like a dangerous person or what? I mean, the conversations that can happen are sometimes hilarious and sometimes really, really important, and sometimes a little bit of both and sometimes neither. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so funny as you were talking. I mean, I guess we should have figured this out before, but my two kids who are still at home are 14 and 17-year-old boys. So we have we're in like the same, whatever atmosphere right now. I love our dinners, and actually in my family, it's pretty much, I would say most days, the only time that the four of us are just fully connected, talking to each other, no screens, nothing. And we love it. And often our sitting together and clean up and everything is like an hour at least. And it's my favorite time of day. Often, we share like our highs and lows of the day, and often it's that dinner because it's like, hey, here we all are together. Yeah. And so I'm with you. I mean, I have a friend who I talked to once who was just having trouble because of sports. The other option with older kids is having like dessert time or tea time. Yes. So, if you're all having dinner scattered, whatever, if there's just a time at, 8:30, yes, like this is our time to just hang out. And again, it could just be 20 minutes of, maybe have a cookie and some tea or talk.
I love that.
So that was another idea too. So I think that if parents are just so stressed, like, oh my gosh, we didn't have dinner together, just find another time. Like you said.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be dinner. The important thing is the together. Yeah.
Because
and together and food is good.
Yes. Too. Yeah. And I think people can go a really long time living in the same house without actually connecting and communicating. And so I love that your main tip for families is just making sure that there's some kind of connection and communication in the evening.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, as we've been talking, I've been realizing I've got a whole checklist. It's called A Checklist to Help You Tame the Weeknight Chaos. And it includes this kind of tip, but it also includes several others. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to post it at weturnedoutokay.com/sunshine. And for your listeners, if anybody wants to come over and grab it, it'll be right there.
Awesome. And I'll put links to everything that we talked about in your website and your podcast and everything, because I know my listeners will really enjoy that as well. Cool. So Karen, any other just wisdom or tips that you like to share with people to just help them relax and be just, calmer about the whole parenting gig?
So, I mean, because that's really where I come to it from is we can get so caught up in the worries and the stresses of the everyday. And actually, I'm gonna the last point I'm gonna leave you with is from my friend Janine Holleran, who did this workshop with me. We're planning another one in the fall, and it was basically like if you're feeling like you've got a whole bunch of things your kid needs to do that night, right? Like they've got to take a bath or a shower. They've got to do their homework. They've got to go to this place with you. They've got to fill out these forms for tomorrow. They've got to make their lunch. Like you can feel so incredibly overwhelmed with all these little check boxes. And what Janine basically said was, and I totally agreed with her, but it was her idea. She said, you know what? Just think like, what's the one most important thing? And focus on that instead of building all these things up in your mind. Just, okay, so tonight we've got to do a bath and we've got to do bed. No, actually, that wasn't it. She said, tonight what we've got to do, people need to eat and people need to go to sleep. If we can get through that, we're going to be fine. Because it's a way of just taking the pressure off yourself,
Oh my gosh, I love that, especially when kids are little, because I feel like just getting through the day can be really challenging. Yeah. And so making, just lowering the expectation to like, hey, let's just, if we're together and people are, giving each other hugs and we're going to bed, then that's good enough. Yeah. For today.
And I think, it really extends into like, I notice this with my teens too. They'll feel overwhelmed. They'll think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to get through all this that I have to do. I've got this and this and this and this. And I find that being able to say to them, okay, you need to be not hungry and you need to be getting good sleep. So like, let's focus on that. And then once you're not hungry anymore, what's going to be next? So really taking it kind of one thing at a time and realizing that there will be time. You just have to take a deep breath and some things you're going to maybe do tomorrow, and that's okay. It's okay if you take your shower tomorrow.
This is good advice for adults too. All the stuff that we learn, we the same thing. And I think, our kids learn that from us too. If they see us like, oh my gosh, I have so many things. And so I've tried to do the 3 things on my list. I have this big long list, but then I try to just say, okay, what about just today? What would I like to try to get done today? And by taking like the big, massive list and just narrowing it down. And I feel like that's good modeling for our kids, because I think a lot of times kids are not wanting to grow up because they see grown-ups not really having fun and living a good life. And so how nice is it if they can see us showing them how to just, kind of narrow things down, prioritize, take some time to just relax with them and communicate and all that. Yeah. That's a huge, the way we model how to live is a huge lesson just to help our kids do the same.
We're showing them what's most important in life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Karen, I could talk to you for hours. It's so fun finding a like-minded parent, and I will put links in the show notes to all of your wonderful resources. I know the Sunshine Parenting listeners will really enjoy your podcast as well as I have. You interview some great guests and cover just a lot of really important topics. So in a really encouraging way. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you very much for those nice compliments. That's really nice to hear.
Yeah. So it's just, and it's just nice. I think a lot of times I think parents feel kind of alone out there in the world, and like there's no one else who's going through their same thing. And I think you and I both can attest from, kids our ages and all the people we've worked with and parents who've confided in us that whatever your problem or issue is, other parents have faced it as well. And there's lots of support and encouragement and help from other people. So just never feel like you're not doing a good job, because you are. Everyone's doing okay. We're all doing the best we can. And little things, little tweaks we can make can just make all the difference in our families.
Yep. Hear, hear. Well said.
So we will do this again sometime. Thank you so much for being on, Karen.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
I really enjoyed chatting with Karen, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. You can learn more about Karen and all of the great resources she has to share with parents at her website, We Turned Out Okay. I will provide links and show notes and information at my website, sunshine-parenting.com. Search for episode 38. I would also encourage you, if you enjoyed this conversation, for you to head over to Karen's podcast, We Turned Out Okay, and listen to episode 224, where she interviewed me about giving your child the magic of summer. And we had so much fun in both of these conversations, and I'm sure we'll be back on again soon. I will leave you with a quote from Karen's website about why she started We Turned Out Okay. I created WeTurnedOutOK.com to help you change your child's behavior from bad to good, feel happy inside, and truly enjoy the time you spend with your young kids.